So, does anybody have a problem with not meeting on Christmas Eve?
He wants double
Church state again.
He doesn't mind as long as there's
Time of year. Britton said he wants to be here.
I'm gonna be gone, so that's the real problem. Too many people are gone, so.
I'll be here as well, but if people don't want to meet on Christmas Eve, then I'm good with that.
Okay, thumbs up on canceling on the 24th? Okay. Next thing is council leadership nominations. I want to say a couple things about this before we go forward with this, because we'll have some time for people to think about this. Ray can probably relate to some of what I'm about to say. When you do this job of being the mayor, there's sometimes a little more to it than you might expect. And it's not uncommon for me to be asked to, and I don't come and tell you about these things, you know, you just do it. To be asked to do welcoming address and read proclamations. I just came from one literally an hour ago, and it can be 3 or 4 times a week. It can be in the morning, afternoon, weekends, evenings. It can be any time. And from my perspective, it's a critical part of serving as mayor. You're the voice of the community. It took me a while to figure this out, but it really matters to people whether the mayor shows up at something. It validates the event. It tells them that what they're doing is important in the eyes of the city. And so I have made a concerted effort, and sometimes I've had to reschedule things in that were already on my schedule to make it happen. But I would like for anyone that is nominated or nominates themselves to be mayor to make some statement to us about their availability and willingness to do those things. Because we all rely upon the person in that position to represent us. So I hope that's a reasonable thing to ask. And so anybody that is nominated or nominates themselves, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I would like to hear that that's a serious commitment, and they'll do whatever they need to do to make those things happen. So, Ray, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, when I was the year I was mayor, I made the same commitment to be at every. I don't think I missed one. I think I maybe had one that I had somebody had to fill in for me, but I just made the commitment, and it was taxing on my job, and because I'm full time over at the college, and so it certainly I have great staff, so it was good, but it was taxing, and it certainly was something that I was well aware that I had to commit to, and being able to do that. So it is not only out in the community, but the meetings that you do have to go to, and the staff will work with you really well on it. But I would agree with Charlie. You know, it's one of those things that you can go out there, and I think it's critical. Like the vice mayor is a critical position as well, as they learn and do that as well, and being able to help out where they need to. So I absolutely agree. But it's not as easy as you would think. It caught I was a little caught with my britches down at first, and it took a little bit of time. Come on, you don't like that comment? Get my britches down. No comment. Well, trying to be a little folksy.
So, and related to that, the current compensation that you all are receiving is $150 for every one of these meetings.
It was
So
wonderful.
don't spend it all in one place. The mayor gets an extra $50. We had it. I just for the heck of it, I tracked my mileage, and it's not uncommon for me to put 100 miles on my car for a month, just going to different things in the community. And there's no mileage claim or anything that comes with the position. You just eat that. The state statute allows council members to be given a stipend of $150 per meeting, really, as a maximum. The maximum for the mayor in state statute is $300. And so I would like to suggest to all of you that we use that maximum amount, not for myself because I'm the outgoing mayor, but for the incoming mayor and mayors following, to recognize the fact that Not only is there an additional time commitment, but there's wear and tear on your vehicle that you can't claim, and it's legitimate to get an extra $100 a week for all of that work. So that's what they put that maximum in-state statute. I don't know how they came up with that number, but because of the things that Ray mentioned and that I mentioned, I think we should take advantage of that and up it to $300. So does anybody have any comment on that? Mike?
How do we go about changing that? Is that an ordinance or resolution or?
State law.
No, changing locally.
We can do it.
Yeah, but
That
is
would
it
be
a resolution, an
Would that be a
ordinance?
resolution or a consent item? Or?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I think it just is a consent item, correct? A minute action? Or is it a reso?
We can have a resolution approved by minute action. Fine, but I would do it by resolution.
Okay, resolution.
Resolution?
That's the right way to go.
I would introduce that resolution, because I think that, you know, not only for all the reasons and the things that Charlie was just talking about, but just looking back on at different times that I've worked with different mayors over the years, there's a lot that they do, not that there isn't a lot that councilmen do, but there's a lot of responsibility there that's additional and different. And so I'd be all in favor of that.
Well,
And, you know, echoing the importance of Charlie talking about being at all these different openings and that kind of stuff. You know, when I was in high school, I remember going to the state CYO conventions all around the state, and the one time Mayor Wataha down in Rock Springs came and talked at the opening of that, and I really remembered that and everything. And I was always pleased to be able to tell him in later years that I remembered him coming, and that meant a lot to our little group that he came and gave a little opening address there. But I think he was, if any of you knew the guy, he was a classic little small town mayor that, you know, was a backslapper and a
He had some
baby's
rough
sister.
years down there.
Oh, yeah, he had some, yeah, but anyways, though.
Well, the
But-
thing I'd also like to add is we all know that we've had a demographic challenge with leadership. And I'm in a position where I'm semi-retired, Bob's retired, Steve, you're back working again, I know Mike, you're retired.
Actually, no, my wife and business partner have said you're retired.
Oh, so you're back to being retired now.
Yeah, that came the 19th of last month.
But, I mean, the smaller the compensation, the more likely it is that it selects for people who simply who have that time available. And so if we want to have, I mean, it's a small change, but maybe for someone it would be just enough to say, well, maybe I can, you know, make this work, so that we can have a more diverse group running the city, so.
Yeah, I support it as a former mayor, and I think it would be you drive a lot, you go around town quite a bit, and you burn a lot of gas, you do that kind of stuff, so I think it'd be a good, in your time away, you know, if somebody gets selected that's, you know, certainly working a full-time job, I get it, I feel it, I know it, so, well worth it, so I would say that.
And to me, those things come together, that if we're going to expect the mayor to do these things, then let's try to make the compensation a little closer to what would be appropriate. So,
Let's do it.
okay.
Mr. Mayor, just
Go
a
ahead.
quick correction. We probably are gonna have to do an ordinance in order to make that change occur, and so it will be a 3-reading process to institute such a change.
Does that change anybody's
Sorry
thoughts
about
on
that.
doing this?
So I think that would mean that it could not be effective for the next mayor's term.
It's gonna be close.
Yeah, we'd have to, be 6
3
weeks
readings.
from now.
Unless we
If
change
we
the
get
rules.
that in by the end. Well, could we change it while the mayor's already in office?
Why don't we do a little homework on that, and then
Yeah,
we'll
the
come back with
problem, what
it.
I'm worrying about is that state statute about not changing someone's
For current.
salary midterm.
Yeah. We'll do a little homework on
We
that. That's a
could
good
just have
point.
the rules and do.
Good question.
If we could do that, yeah.
Either that or you do it with the budget.
Then, though, it would still not benefit whoever the
Comes in
other
with your
mayor
mayor.
is.
Oh, no, it's a term. Yeah, it says it's a term.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe this is a conversation down the road, and I don't know if this council would ever want to address it, but, you know, one of the things that I had thought about, if about at some point, that mayor position maybe might need to be a two-term mayor. And the reason I say that is that it gives the continuity for 2 years. And I've had conversations with other people with that it might be I think a positive thing, especially with the work with Carter and the work with the office and in the community, might not be something we maybe need to look at down the road.
Was that limited by statute or?
No, it's
by custom? If it's just by custom, I nominate Charlie.
I'm guessing it's 1 year though, just because we're all on alternating election cycles. So I mean, if somebody who was up next year, we selected as mayor this year, then they couldn't do it for 2 years, depending on that election result.
Right.
It would have to be a tradition thing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Mr. Mayor, it just so happens, the city attorney and I have collaborated very, very recently on some statutory language that might suggest that is the requirement, and we have potentially not been aware of that. So
The mayor does serve 2 terms.
right, and so, but I would ask that we be given the opportunity to do a little homework on that question as well, and bring you back an opinion that would suggest definitively what it is that we should do. But we may be in that world anyway.
For some reason, I always just thought it was by custom, but I've been really wrong before.
And the only reason I bring
Oh,
up,
really?
the only reason I brought it up is I feel like your first year you're trying to figure it all out, and then your second year I think would be that. That's just my opinion on it. Just after serving as mayor.
The only custom I'm aware of is that the vice mayor traditionally has moved into the mayoral
Right.
spot the following year.
We'll-
Okay.
We'll get those 2
All right.
items ready.
We'll talk about that again then.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be a work session, on the work session agenda for next week.
Sure.
Okay. All right, Monita Divide. The reason this is on the agenda is that I've been asked to go to Cheyenne, speaking of mayoral allocations, on the 2nd, to meet with the governor and the other mayors in Shoshone and Riverton to talk about the Monita Divide gas project. And our partners in Shoshone and Riverton are very much in favor of this project being approved, which will involve punching a lot of holes in that area, right around, just to the north of Shoshone, basically, north and east, I believe,
Yeah.
of Shoshone. And for those of you who've been following this, there's been a real debate about the environmental impact of this project, because they're going to pull a lot of water out of the ground, and they are going to allow it to go down Badwater Creek, which is essentially a dry creek most of the year, and then that water would go into the Boysen Reservoir, and there's a lot of debate as to whether the amount of contaminants in that water will affect the water quality of Boysen Reservoir. Most people seem to think it's really literally a drop in the bucket. But I don't want to go down to represent this council without us having a discussion amongst ourselves as to whether we support the project. The reason that I got involved with this, I was concerned about the unmitigated impacts of the development, because there's going to be a lot of money made by these private companies, and we will shoulder some of that burden in terms of the people living in Casper, commuting to the gas fields, which is additional demand on all of our city services and our infrastructure. And so, just as is the case with other major projects, there is a process in place for the municipalities to receive some compensation from the companies for those unmitigated impacts. And so I wasn't involved with the discussion to either say yes or no that we were in favor of it, but that if it happened, we should receive some compensation for those impacts. So I'm willing to hear for those of you following this or have questions about it. Again, I try to make a practice of not lone rangering these things and going to a meeting expressing my personal opinions without checking with the council first. So any comments on A, whether I should go, and B, if I go, what should I say? Ken?
My only comment would be, I understand the concerns of the people with the water going into the river, because if people were gonna do this, the west side of Casper Mountain, dumping it into Bates Creek running into the Platte River and coming on down to us. Now, we got an awesome water filtration. Our water system is amazing. But if this was us and they were gonna dump it into Bates Creek, which we know goes into Platte River, would we be okay with it? Would the majority of Casper say, yeah, let them do it, that's fine? Not looking at, we would get benefits from it, just the fact that they're gonna drill, they're gonna dump the water into it, and it's gonna come down to us. Would we sit here and go, we'll give you a big thumbs up regarding it? And that's where my mind goes, is that's what these people are saying, is this is gonna be just down from us, it's going into this, it's gonna go into our river. How would we feel, how would the city of Casper feel regarding that?
Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've read the report by DEQ, and basically, to sum it up, and it's 30 or 40 pages to read it, a lot of math in it, but statistically, they're saying it's not significant. And the other thing, as I recall, one of the provisos was that they would have an RO system, and they would be pre-treating water in order to make the goals that they have to meet when it discharges into what's the name of the creek? Badwater Creek. Strangely enough.
I was gonna say, coincidence?
But it's a lot of reading, but it's worth reading the report, because the reports that we were seeing was, oh, it's gonna degrade the water, and their conclusion was it's not statistically significant.
Well, and to piggyback on that, I believe the report was required to outline a worst-case scenario, which would mean the maximum number of wells being drilled, the maximum amount of water being pulled up, and the likelihood of that is extremely low. This would be more of a staged process where there would be some online, and then they would be shut down, and others would come online, and so the amount of water would be much lower. But I don't want to try to play the role of an environmental engineer, or that I somehow have the skill to analyze these things. I'm just, my reason for going down, if I go, would be to support our colleagues in Shoshone and Riverton from an economic development standpoint, because they're our partners.
I'll bet if you were to poll around this room, you know, who's the more extreme environmentalist and who's the less extreme, I would probably poll pretty strongly on the environmental side of things. But, you know, what I understand about it kind of tracks along with what Bob's saying. So I would say that if, you know, I don't have a problem with you going down and saying that we generally support this development, as long as all the environmental safeguards are in place and everything. I think there is a big difference that if there was a worst case scenario problem, which I would never ever want to see, but a big difference is that in terms of human impact, that would spread out in Boise Reservoir before it got to Thermopolis or anywhere else. It would diffuse in Boise. That's a big difference. You know, this would be more like if they were to say, well, okay, you know, we're going to do something upstream from Pathfinder or up there. But even if it was upstream from Casper, if they followed all the correct environmental safeguards and everything, I wouldn't have a problem supporting it.
Okay, one more. Were you waiting already, Steve?
Yeah, I was.
I'm sorry, then I'll get to you, Ken. Go ahead.
The thing we need to understand as well is the impact that we will get here will be from the sales tax coming from the restaurants and the hotels, because most of that project is happening in Fremont County. So the sales tax from the casing, the infrastructure for the field itself will wind up all going to Fremont County. So we will be kind of, well, just like we have been for all of the stuff north of Douglas and over in Converse County. We have had the workers staying here in our hotels because that's where the Halliburtons, the BJs, those people are, but we have not been getting the revenue from our supply store sales taxes. Now, a lot of this stuff has been moving through our supply stores, but we aren't getting any revenue from that.
Yeah, you're right, we had that
Yeah,
before.
we haven't been
One more
getting a lot
comment
of
and then we gotta move on. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Ken.
mine was just for clarification. The water going in doesn't just affect it does affect the people because I look at the hunters that go out, deer, antelope, all the entire environment will be going. I believe that they put out good water. I mean, when they're pulling out, they're filtering, they're making it, I agree that it's gonna be insignificant, but I do take consideration of kind of like the game and fish regarding what does it do to the fish, what does it do to the animals, what does it do to the plants, all the way through is what I'm thinking of. And I guess I don't know enough about, I'm just saying us as CAT, before we say, yes, Mayor, we would love for you to go, if everybody's comfortable with it, I am too. I bring up that scenario that if it's not good for a deer, I go shoot that deer, that's going into my family. That's what I think it does affect everybody in the long. But if it's safe, the safeguards up, I agree. I'm for it. So I just
Again, assuming what Bob says is true, that the studies have been done and.
One other quick one, just from my experience, in 20-some years, we pumped, at the property I worked at, we pumped 1,500 gallons a minute out of uranium mine. And we had to sample that thing weekly and sometimes daily, and that water did go in the Platte River, down Bates Creek, eventually. But it was very well controlled, and believe me, you had to have your samples pulled. And we treated it, but that was 1,500 gallons a minute. That's a lot of water.
Thumbs up on whether I should go to this meeting. Okay, I guess I'm going. Okay. Wyoming Business Council grant. Carter?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, really we just want to get your blessing to bring it forward to the November 26th work session. We're considering another run with regard to the grant in support of the river project. And so with that, the detail and so forth as to the merits of the application and whatnot would be brought up then, if that's okay with all of you.
Okay. So we make a run at it again. Let's do so.
Thank you.
Okay, sole source, polymers for the wastewater treatment plant.
Mr. Mayor, would it be okay if we jump to the annexation
Sure.
report and then maybe if the
Okay.
time exists to cover the
Okay with
polymer
me,
thing?
let's do that.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. You have received the annexation report regarding the South Poplar Street properties, and I want you to be aware of some of the details with respect to what that report covers that you will find if you haven't read it yet. The basic idea is that indeed this is an annexation that while we don't have a complete surround like we did with the thank you. I always want to say Green Acres, Green Valley. For those of you who are as old as me, probably remember that reference. In this circumstance, infrastructure and so forth was extended pursuant to an agreement to annex when the council determined that it was an appropriate time to do so. We're suggesting that this would be one of those times. You've heard some discussion already that sewer access and so forth would be mandated pursuant to a requirement upon annexation, and the reality is whether they are annexed into the community or not, that requirement already exists. So if their septic fails, they will be required to tie into the city sewer, whether they're in the city or out. And so annexation is not really a contributing factor to whether or not they will need to tie into sewer when their septic gives away. but we would not require that tie-in if their septic is working fine and exhibiting no problems. So I want you to be really keenly aware of that. The other thing that I want you to be really aware of is that indeed we are trying to attach a zoning classification that aligns very, very closely with what their current use of their property is. And so we're proposing as a part of this process, considering that urban agriculture, which is a zoning classification that allows an element of animals and out properties.
Secondary structures.
Secondary structures, exactly. The other thing that's nice about this type of an annexation is there really is no expectation or anticipation that infrastructure would need to be expanded or developed or roads built or anything like that. And so it makes these kinds of annexations pretty ideal in that the property owner nor the city would have an expectation that major capital investments would be needed in order to facilitate the appropriate requirements for city life or whatever. So most of it's there. The road that services that area of town is actually a state highway, so we wouldn't have any obligation to improve it. Again, pretty ideal situation with regard to an annexation and those typical concerns as it relates to coming into the city. You will see in the report the monetary impacts. We are not talking about a huge influx or windfall of revenue from year to year, but it is enough to say that we would support making it happen, particularly given the fact that there's really no offsetting expenses to nullify what it is that the city would gain by way of sales tax revenue and property tax revenue. You'll recall too that the influx of sales tax revenue or the increase of sales tax revenue to the city is not an impact to the property owner. It's really more of a ledger adjustment given the population that they represent into our community. And so the individual property owner, the person that lives in that house that would potentially be annexed, is not going to see an increase in their sales tax. They will see a very moderate increase in their property tax. You'll notice that for the entire annexation area, we're talking about an $8,000 property tax increase to come into the city. And per property, that doesn't amount to a whole lot on an annual basis.
Quite a significant reduction in their water rates.
And there is a corresponding reduction in their utility rates because they would be in city versus out of city. Beyond that, those are the major pieces of information that people typically ask about. We have been visiting with the property owners, the neighborhood, if you will. We've sent out FAQs in response to some of the questions that they have asked in these meetings, and we've tried to be real communicative, not only in that circumstance, but with regard to individual calls that we've been taking as well. So any other questions that you would have or anything we can do homework on for you at all?
Do we have the ability within our system to delete the sewer charge if their septic tank is operable?
Mr. Mayor and Councilman, I may not be understanding the question correctly, but if they have a septic, we would not be charging them sewer at all. Yeah.
Because they're separate items on the water bill.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would not have a sewer charge.
Good.
But sooner or later, septic systems fail, so they'll be positioned to hook in if and when that happens. I'd just like to add, Craig, I went to the one meeting Craig facilitated. It was very well done. These folks were very appropriate, and they just had a lot of questions. Their concerns were that they could be grandfathered to have animals on their property, but what if they want to get one more animal? They can't get one more animal because they were grandfathered in for 2 instead of 3, or if they wanted to add a building. But this urban agriculture allows them all of those options. So I think that's a really good solution for them. Do we still have time to talk about sole source?
If we can get it done in 30 seconds, I bet you we can cover it.
Mr. Mayor, Council, we use polymers in our last process of our sludge treatment before it goes into our centrifuge. It acts as a coagulant to even that solid process. We did a pilot study back probably 10 years ago, and this kelp water polymer is what works best with our sludge. If we were to change our polymers based off competitive bidding, we would have to recalibrate all of our equipment to work with this new polymer. We've been using this polymer since 2008, I believe. So we're recognizing the fact that we've been doing it since that time without a contract, without trying to formalize this contract with them. Hence the sole source request is about $45,000 to get us through the rest of this fiscal year. And we're being another contract for the next fiscal year. I think that was 37.
Questions, concerns about sole source on this? Okay. Good, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay.
Look at that.
Yeah, that was about 30.
I think I'm good now.
I now call the November 19, 2019 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch?
All members are present.
And again, just a reminder that our meetings are televised on Channel 19. We have some, 192, thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor's a critical part of these meetings, as we all know. We have some guests tonight. That's cool. Good to have you guys here. We need some volunteers to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance. You know what? I'm going to ask all of you to come up here. We can fit you up here. Come on up and we're going to say the pledge together, okay? Just come on around. Right up to the top here, okay? Just face the flag here. Palm flag. Whenever you guys are ready, let's start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all, and we'll be hearing from you in a few minutes, right? Great. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the November 5th, 2019 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on November 14th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Cathy. Any amendments to those minutes? If not, please cast your vote and please record the vote.
All members voting aye. Motion passed.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the November 5th, 2019 executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilwoman Lutz. Any amendments to those minutes? Please cast your vote and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the November 19, 2019 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilman Friel. Any abstentions to those bills and claims? Please cast your vote and please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Now is the time we invite anyone to come in the audience who wishes to speak with council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following. Please state your name and address. Please direct your questions to me as the mayor. Please no personal attacks on council. And council will not respond to personnel matters. Those will be referred to the city manager. And please keep your remarks limited to 5 minutes. Mr. Sheets, good evening.
You know, I missed you, Mayor. Last meeting, I was all discombobulated. You know, all my photos were in front of this gentleman and they weren't spread out and, you know, not well organized.
I was on the phone.
Yeah, well, you know, I hope you were on a hunting trip or something like that.
I was in Florida.
Were you? You were
playing
on the sunny
softball.
beach?
Yes.
That pina coladas were flowing, huh? Congratulations for that trip, and I'm glad you made it back
Thank
safe.
you, sir.
Were you on a jet?
Was I on a jet?
Yeah, when you went to Florida and
Yes.
back? That's a risk. You always keep your feet on the ground. There's always patience. Yeah. So, Charlie, good to see you back. I'd like to introduce some very evil eyes again. Porcelain eyes, and they connect together as a nuclear to narcotics sales. You know, one diverts the other so we can compile money. And, you know, that's not my issue. I'm just bringing it forth. You understand that?
Go ahead.
I don't have the power. I don't want the power. I just want to explain the rules. Everybody's got to pay for what they do, correct? Would you agree, Mayor?
Well, go ahead. This is your time, sir.
All right, so we got cornfields again, meth labs, Wyoming spread. I took it all the way to the Atlantic Ocean as I promised. And as well, we got the other meth labs. They're in black and white. You know, you can't get out to an ocean oil rig. You know, that Ocean 12's where the thing blew up. I think that might have been a bad meth lab cook, something. I don't know. You know, I might be wrong. I might be wrong, folks. So here I am in humility. Are you with me on this? Correct. I'm not accusating it. I missed you. You keep me in check, Mayor. Something about you. You got an aura. As well. Eyeballs. If if you could see in color, you better be blessed and very grateful. But porcelain eyes, this is what I'm talking about, Mayor. It's called a conspiracy, connected, like this, you know? And these are the people that are ruining our country. They're the people getting away with murder. Insurance companies, I would love to present these porcelain eyeballs to insurance companies. You know, I love my dad so much that I have to say this, but that is the superpower of our country right now. And they are certainly not taking care of older people like you and me, Mayor. If you understand what I'm saying. We are certainly not on good ground with that as well. Slowing down so I don't get angry. My sister and my mom. My mother's the left-hand wing there. That is a very evil woman. She launders money for the Vulcan government that gets away with these eyeballs and indictment. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but you guys know Mike over there. Mike, are you awake? Dad's great. Get it? All right. And my little sister's the left-hand little kitty cat on the left there to these eyes.
Just 1 minute, Mr. Sheets.
It's plenty of time. Yellow and green homes, if you'll notice, and every officer, chief, if you will listen to me, I am correct. If it's not on the broad side, it's on the other side. You'll see a yellow and green home on the telephone pole marker there. That could be a very, very indicator of evil right there. Inbreeding, you know what I mean? Evil inbreeds, Mayor, if you understand what I'm saying. Right, right. And then if we can skip to one more. I was so wrong, and I apologize to you people. Hot shot trains to the cell sites, you'll see them on there. Wrong.
Need to wrap up, Mr. Sheets, okay?
Yeah. Hot shot trains, the container trains are the cell sites when they're on the land. When it comes to the ocean and the containers, nuclear, that is satellites. You shall have that picture in that portfolio right there, Mayor. And I appreciate seeing you.
Okay, good to see you again.
And I'm grateful that you made it back safely.
Thank you.
Don't fly.
Okay.
Walk. Patience is a virtue.
Okay. Good to see you again.
You too. Thank you, folks. I got one more meeting with you guys, and then my friend Kelly is booting me out of town.
Okay, good luck.
He's a nice guy, Kelly.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Take care.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, council members, City Manager Napier, and all the staff and citizens here. My name is Taya True Wells, and I live at 5000 Chinook Trail. I am also one of the leaders for Girl Scout Troop 1839. It is the work of Girl Scouts to lead, inspire, and train girls to be the future leaders in our community. To do this, we are here today to take a glimpse into our citizen-run government and the women and men that help our community not just function, but to prosper. We are also here a bit early, but in the spirit of Thanksgiving, to say thank you for all you do. Much of what makes this community great are the myriad of services that our tax dollars support. They include, but are definitely not limited to, the heroes of the police and fire departments, the high-quality water that our health and our rivers require, and the state-of-the-art solid waste facility. I have asked 3 girl representatives to query her fellow troop members and report to you what their favorite things are about Casper. While some of them are not directly under your purview, many are supported by the 1-cent sales tax. Thank you for the hours of commitment you are giving these future leaders and their peers and the breadth of amenities that you support. Our first speaker will be Grace Hall.
Will that mic adjust down far enough? Okay.
My name is Grace Hall, and I'm representing the Brownies. And I'm thankful for the Science Zone, the Mike Cedar Water Park, and the library. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second speaker is Nancy Nelson.
Hi, I am Nancy Nelson. I am here to represent the juniors in Troop 1839. Since it is close to Thanksgiving, we would like to share with you what we are thankful for. We are thankful for the soccer fields, the police department, the Hogadon, city parks, the NIC, the fire department, the Rev Center, the Metro Animal Center, and the Metro Animal Center. I've lived in 5 different states, and by far Casper's is the most enjoyable place to live in. Thank you for making this community a great place.
Thank you.
Our last speaker will be Maddie Bates.
Hello, my name is Madeline Bates, and I am here with Troop 1839. I am here to say thank you for what the City Council has provided, such as the NIC, the biathlon facility, the library, and many more. We are happy for what has been provided for us, and we hope to see many things coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Any questions for these fine young women? Councilman Bates.
Question I have for you young ladies is, what is something you would like to see Casper invest in or add to that you'd like to see? Anybody?
If
Come on
that
up.
could be your next visit.
My name is Rory Bagley. I would like to see the library get more funds from the 1 cent funds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Huber has something to say. Give us just a minute, we'll be right there.
Well, young ladies, I just want to tell you that one of the things that I'm thankful for in Casper is that there are guys like you that live here, and I think that you're part of what makes this a great town, and that's part of what I'm thankful for.
I just had a meeting a couple hours ago with the Small Business Administration, and I made a few remarks that I've made at many of these meetings. And as most people know, Wyoming as a whole, and Casper specifically, have had a significant challenge with our demographics, which is a fancy way of saying we're getting too old, or there's too many of us and not enough of you. And one of the reasons for that is that when young people like yourselves get to the age where you have choices as to where to live, too many of you have chosen to live elsewhere and to leave Casper. And so it is nice to see some of this gratitude and appreciation and awareness of the good things in this community that all of you just expressed, because we are hopeful that when you reach that point in your life where you have choices, maybe you'll go off and have an adventure somewhere or go to school somewhere else, but it will always stick in your mind that Casper was a pretty cool place, and Casper would be a good place to return to, because we're going to need you all. Because all of us up here, well, I guess I'll accept a few of you, most of us up here, by the time you're adults, will be drooling in a nursing home somewhere. We won't be doing this stuff. We will need you to step up and take over for us and take care of us, because there are too many of us and not enough of you. So I hope you can continue to spread the word amongst your friends that that you're fortunate to live here, and we all are fortunate to live here. And let's all work together to make it an even better place as we move on from here. So thank you all for coming, and come back again. Maybe you'll come back with Councilman Bates' question with some answers for some other answers for Councilman Bates' question as to what we can do to make Casper an even better place for young people. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
One other thing I would like to say too is throughout my life I have had to make speeches and presentations, and it can be a very scary thing. I admire you young people for having the courage to come up here in front of this public forum and make these presentations. That was very good. I appreciate that, and congratulations.
Hear, hear. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to push you guys.
No, that's okay.
My name's Chris Dietrich, and I live over on Washakie Street, which is about 2.5 blocks from Kelly Walsh on Wind River. And about a week ago, we had an incident, and I went to the city council, or to the city administration building, and made a request to get some sort of speed control, whether it be speed bumps or what you guys might decide. We have you guys all seen the video that Ray and Steve shared with you guys? Now, granted, that was one of the worst ones we've had, but it was pretty severe, and maybe the video doesn't show that, but it was scary. My wife got home 5 minutes before. If you saw in the video, she was actually standing in the front of our yard, and 10 minutes later, she was going to be loading up our kids on the street with that car right there. Scares the heck out of me. Every year it does, and this was just kind of the final draw, so to speak. Last year, reported, unreported incidents, little things, you say little things, but like sliding up on sidewalks, not because just it's slick, but because people are going way too fast for the road conditions. Last year there was literally the house beside us, there was a road sign that was taken out, very similar situation. Wasn't as scary, so to speak, but it was still pretty scary, thinking, you know, if my kid was out front, that's not a good thing. And even though I'm an older person, I have two very young kids. I have a 4.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And it's gotten to the point where there are times I will literally walk out and stop vehicles on the street. It's that bad. My request, or my reason for being here tonight is, one, to follow up with the council members I spoke with, but two, to try to bring some urgency to this. I know the city, I know how the city is, but I don't want it to be 3 months from now and nothing is done. One of my concerns, and I know everybody's busy, but I know how follow-up is a lot of times with many things. When I was in city administrator's office a week ago, and I'm not knocking anybody, I don't know the situation, but I was told I would be contacted that day by one of the police officers to get some extra officers in that area that day or the following week with the weather the way it was, you know, to kind of watch for that. I never did receive a call. I don't know if there was additional police in that area or not. But here we go again tomorrow. We got snow coming again. And, you know, at 7:30, I'm going to be loading my kid up and taking him to school. At 9 o'clock, my wife's going to be loading my daughter up and heading to work. And it's all on that street. I don't want to throw all the blame on the kids because it's not always kids. There's been adults that I've seen flying by as well. But, you know, you guys are going to do what you feel is best. My personal opinion, speed bumps would be the way to go. I don't think there's any snow removal on that street, and I know that's a concern when it comes to speed bumps. I could be completely wrong, but I remembered myself as a kid, and if you put a speed monitor out there that tells how fast they're going to get going, when I was that age, you know, I'm not going to lie, I'd probably see how fast I could get it up to. And that was wrong, and it's wrong to this day, but, you know, people are the way they are. I think in certain areas, going down 12th Street, I believe it is, you guys have the speed monitors there, and I drive that street a lot. And it helps me, because a lot of times I'm thinking about 20 other things, and it keeps me in check. I don't know that that would be the case there. So again, I won't take a whole lot of time. I just wanted to say, one, to make sure you guys saw the video. Two, to try to bring some sort of urgency to this winter setting in. It's bad enough in the summertime. You know, if I need to get petitions, I know that wouldn't be an issue. But I just guess I came to sympathize with you guys and say, hey, let's try to get something done here, you know, before Christmas when you know, what a horrible time for something to happen. Anytime's a horrible time for something to happen, but sooner or later it's going to be bad, and I hate to see that. So,
Questions for Mr. Dietrich? Go ahead, Councilman Bates.
I just wanted to let you know that that is on a work session for December 10th, that we are going to be discussing that very thing. Councilman Frill brought that up to us, and we did feel that that was an urgent. The soonest we could get it on was December 10th work session, so I do believe that's on there, just to let you know. We are taking it pretty serious
so
regarding
December 11th,
December
speed bumps
10th.
will go in.
Oh, no. That would be nice.
I'll give you to the 15th. That's fine. No, there is an urgency for it. I don't mean to make light of it.
Councilman Huber?
In addition to speed bumps, do you have any other suggestions?
You know, it's hard, and I don't know if you guys know the area, but you come off of Kelly Walsh, and it goes both ways. Obviously, in the morning, it's typically going. People fly down that road, whether they're on lunch break or lunch hour or whatever, and they're trying to get to 2nd Street as fast as possible, so it just depends which street. I mean, Washakee's just one of the streets. I'd love for them to be on Washakee, but that's pretty selfish because the root of the problem is actually Wind River Avenue. I mean, you know, talk to the police. I don't know what, I mean, you guys deal with this all the time. I just know something has to happen, and maybe the digital signs will help, but I'm leery of that. So, no, I don't, besides speed bumps. But at Wind River, like I said, is the root of the issue, because it could be 2 streets down, the same thing's happening. I'm sure they have the same problems. And there's kids up and down all of those streets, whether they're walking to school or, you know, we don't let our kids play in the front yard, unfortunately, and we're always outside.
Councilman Frill?
I just wanted to add that I think the root of the problem is Wind River, and,
guarantee it.
I guess for follow-up for for the PD and whatnot, the issue comes, during school hours. If you go down Walsh Drive, that's all 20 mile an hour because you end up in front of Woods School, and that's 20 mile an hour. So most of those kids are coming out, and I don't want to blame it all on the kids
No,
at
that's
a high school, but they come out of that parking lot and they can go down Wind River. It's not a 20 mile an hour zone for them. They go down and then they'll cut back up, I believe, on Washakie and come right back out on Wind River, and they bypass that 20 mile an hour zone. And so that's why you get so much traffic and these issues take place. So that truly is why I think you get so much traffic down there.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Well, we'll talk about it on the 10th. Councilman Cathy.
I had a quick question too, because I don't remember how the parking lots were laid out before the remodel reconstruction. Did this problem exist with the old high school? Or is this something that's just?
It's been there. It's just my kids are getting to the age,
Okay.
you know, that we let our 4.5-year-old go in our backyard and play alone, but he always likes to go sit out on our front porch and get the mail and stuff like that. And, you know, I don't want to restrict him, but I'm not going to let him go out and get the mail when I don't want him to get in the car. I mean, we can't, you know, unfortunately, our driveway is taken up because of my business. I've got 2 trailers in there, so I can't, you know, we park on the street 90% of the time. So we're loading and unloading kids there.
Okay. We'll talk about it on the 10th.
Well, thank you guys for your time, and if you need any follow-up, let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Oh. My name is Andrea Boyer. I live on 2116 Omaha Trail in Barnum. And I came today to address you, the Honorable Mayor, and the Town Council of Casper. And I apologize in advance. I wasn't expecting there to be kids here, and this is a little uncomfortable. But as you know, earlier this year, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals struck down a ban on women being topless in Fort Collins, Colorado. And unfortunately, not only did this affect Colorado, but it affected our home state of Wyoming. As a mother and a woman, and as a resident that calls this area home, I found it necessary to speak on this matter. First and foremost, I have a responsibility to my children to defend their well-being and their innocence. The now real possibility that my kids could be exposed to people not being fully dressed in public is appalling to me. This ruling infringes on personal, moral, ethical, and religious choice. I'm here today to ask you to consider how this will impact not only the families in our community, but also our schools and our daycares, especially as they do things like field trips and such throughout the community and go to public events. I also wanted to point out that the notion that women's breasts are not sexual in any way and that they can be exposed publicly creates confusion in regards to our current state and local laws here in Wyoming. The law clearly states that the definition for intimate parts includes the breast of a female person, unquote. That definition is repeated in Casper city codes. To say that opposing a ban on toplessness for women is pro-women doesn't make sense when it is contrary to the laws that we have in place that protect women and girls. I also wanted to ask a question as I've been reading up on this issue. I'm not sure if they had indicated in any way if this topless issue is only for women that are 18 and up or if this also involves minors. If minors can choose to be topless in public and end up in a photo, does that constitute child pornography if that photo gets circulated for any reason, even if it was intentionally innocent? As the mayor and as the town council, I implore you to consider carefully the rights of all the citizens here in our community, and especially consider our children. The saying goes that one person's rights end where another person's begins. I am aware that this issue is beyond just a local level and that this is, you know, beyond state level even. My hope here today is to encourage you and to ask you to take courage in defending and enforcing just and constitutional law, despite whatever pressure there may be to support, you know, some rather popular ideologies that do not fit. I also want you to know that any enforcement of these laws to keep decency in this town will be supported not only by me, but by others that also agree with me that we're unable to make it here today, that I'm basically representing. And I want to thank you again for your time and for your public service in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Boyer? Okay, thank you. Anyone else this evening? Okay. Okay, let's move on then. Please read the consent agenda titles.
Establishing December 3rd, 2019 as the public hearing date for consideration of the following 3 items. 7A1A, approving the city-initiated an annexation of 13 properties along the west side of South Poplar, south of West 50th Street, and the zoning of said properties as urban agriculture. 7A1B, approving a plat and subdivision agreement for the Fairgrounds Home Edition Number 2. And 7A1C, a plat creating the Ely addition to the city of Casper and zoning of said addition as R2 1-unit residential. Establishing January 7th, 2020 as the public hearing date for determining if the annexation of 13 properties along the west side of South Poplar, south of West 50th Street, and the zoning of said properties as urban agriculture complies with Wyoming statutes 15-1-402. That item was 7A2, and 7A3 is the establishing of January 21st, 2020 as the public hearing date for determining if the annexation of the Ely addition to the city of Casper also complies with the Wyoming statute 15-1-402.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Cathy, I think. Or Councilman Hopkins, sorry.
Close enough.
Okay. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the plat subdivision agreement and zone change creating the DeWald Divide addition. Mr. City Attorney, do you have exhibits?
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 2 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier dated November 15, 2019. And exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated November 4, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This particular request has a number of factors to it, one of which, of course, is approving the plat that creates the addition. But also, as the exhibit shows here, which will be up here in just a second, would indicate a rezone of the 3 lots that are being engaged in this addition. As you can see, or you will see here on your exhibit, Lot 1 will retain its character as an ED type educational zoning classification. Lot 2 would be changed to a C2 or general business type classification. And then Lot 3 would become an R4 type classification, which is a multi-family residential classification. The Planning Commission had the opportunity to review this request by the petitioner and did approve this unanimously.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. And again, public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes, and please no duplication. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the DeWald Divide addition to please approach the lectern. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. I'm David DeWald, and I'm the one that's got this started. And so it's pretty much cut and dry. I got one piece of property, and I'm trying to divide it into three. The school is currently being used by Miss Ashley's daycare, and we are still working through negotiations to sell that piece to her. And then once the other, if this is approved, the corner piece will probably be sold to somebody that wants to develop that. And I intend to keep the upper flat piece behind the school.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from Mr. DeWald? Apparently not.
Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Is anyone else here to speak in favor of the issues involving the DeWald Divide addition? At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving the DeWald Divide addition to please approach the lectern. Is anyone here to speak in opposition? There being no others to speak for or against the issues involving the DeWald Divide addition, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a plat, subdivision agreement, and zone change, creating the DeWald Divide Addition subdivision.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Cathy, seconded by Councilman Friel. Discussion. Anyone have any concerns, questions? Okay. Any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
See you guys. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of amendment to the speed zones. Mr. City Attorney, do you have exhibits?
We have one exhibit, Your Honor. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Andrew Beamer to J. Carter Napier, dated October 9, 2019.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this information that you're considering this evening changes a number of speed limits that you are all familiar with. One in particular would be in front of the hospital, which changes the 20 mile per hour speed limit to 30, which, as you know, is kind of a reversal, if you will, of a decision made earlier in the year by the council. The other speed that you would be considering would be along King Boulevard, which actually elevates the speed limit there from its current restriction of 30 miles per hour to 40.
Okay, council will now listen to public comment, and again, public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the speed zone changes to please approach the lectern. Anyone here to talk about speed limits tonight? There being no one to speak in favor, I would now ask anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the issues involving these speed zone changes to please approach the lectern. Anyone opposed? Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gabriel Green. I live at 5041 Pay It Forward Drive, The Ridge at Blackmore. So I didn't plan on speaking on this or anything. I figured somebody else would. So a lot of my fellow citizens, I hear them whining about this whole speed limit a lot. And like, I kind of get it. I lived in that area when I grew up, kind of by the college. You take 2nd Street, you whip around, like it's nice to go 30 miles an hour. But I think that like in the modern age, we've kind of forgotten what a privilege it is to go 20 miles an hour. Like way back when, back in my day and all that jazz, like they were going, from St. Louis, like across the mountains at like a snail's pace compared to today. If they got 20 miles in a day, that was nuts. Like, oh, good for us. So like, yeah, it's still 15 minutes from anywhere in Casper to anywhere else in Casper, maybe 30 if you're like really stuck behind traffic. So I get that there's like a lot of emotion in these people who everybody seems to want us to change it back, get back to 30 miles an hour. I want a gun by the hospital and like really do some damage on a pregnant lady, not just 20 miles worth. But like, that was sarcasm. But I feel like changing it back is kind of ridiculous when it does make sense that the area in front of and around the hospital would be a 20-mile-an-hour zone. I've heard people talk about like, oh, it's bad for my brakes to slow down that much. If you were going so fast that you have to slow down to 20 miles an hour and it's destroying your brakes, you were probably going above 30 anyways. So like all of the arguments I hear just come down to like impatience and like, I don't know, plan an extra 5 minutes and go 20 miles an hour for like 5 whole minutes on the road and then get back to the 30 zone. Otherwise, like the rest of it, I haven't looked at it in depth, so I'm not really speaking in opposition to that. Just the idea of changing the speed limit back just because people don't like having to slow down in a place they used to go fast seems naive and like it's kowtowing to a whim instead of logic. So those are my thoughts there.
I timed it myself. Your 5 minutes is a little bit off. The amount of time, the amount of extra time it takes to drive 20 miles an hour versus 30 miles an hour during that, along that 5-block section is about 30 seconds.
It's not much. I also drive like this old 91 Bronco, so going 30 is like annoying anyways. I love going just 20. It's great.
Questions for Mr. Green, right? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Councilman Bates.
Just to clarify, the only part that we're changing from the 20 is on Second Street. All the rest of it, all the way around the hospital, will remain 20 miles an hour, just in case you didn't know that.
I appreciate the clarification. I wasn't completely sure there, but like my comments still stand 100%.
As well,
back on Second Street.
as well as Second Street between McKinley and Conwell.
Yeah, and that
remains 20, correct?
Yeah, that seems like the part people are most.
Oh, it does not. We eliminated all that. Excuse me. I misread it.
Yeah, that seems like what people are annoyed by, but again, it just seems to me like it's a petty annoyance for a tiny, tiny, tiny delay in your day.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Green?
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in opposition to these changes? There being no one else to speak for or against the issues involving speed zone changes, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance amending the Casper Municipal Code pertaining to 30 and 40 mile per hour speed zones.
As chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So move.
Second. Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilman Huber. Discussion. Councilman Cathy.
To allude a little bit to Mr. Green's comments, the reason that the speed limit was originally reduced was because there was a concern about the number of accidents that were happening on Second Street. Having compared the traffic statistics from the same period in 2018 to 2019, the accident rate actually went up with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. So the whole justification was kind of blown out of the window, so to speak. And with the public comment, that is part of the reason why this change is being made. Didn't necessarily have to do with the 30 seconds, but it proved no help.
Thank you, Councilman. Other comments, discussion? Councilman Friel?
I will make one more comment. It didn't help out the first time when I said we should add it 20 all the way downtown, so I'll own that one. But I still somewhat disagree with 20 miles per hour in front of a hospital. I mean, we have 20-mile-an-hour zones and school zones to keep our kids safe. You have sick people trying to cross the street to go to a hospital, so I think it should still be 20 in front of a hospital. But with that being said, I still agree with the change to be made, and so just wanted to voice my opinion about the hospital area.
Councilman Huber?
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Sir, I agree with what you're saying. You know, doesn't actually add that much time to your travel time, but to have the lower speed limit. But the my point is that if I honestly, truly could see any data or anything that would convince me that it would make traffic and everything in front of the hospital or around the hospital safer to have that be a 20-mile-an-hour zone, I would feel differently about it than I do. I haven't seen anything that convinces me that that would actually make things safer, because a great many of the serious collisions and problems that there have been around the hospital have been things that people were, 50, 60 miles an hour, just not 30 miles an hour. And so that's part of why I'm in favor of this change.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you. I support this. I don't think there's anything that says we can't put a school zone any place we want. If you want to call it a school zone, we can certainly do that. I don't think there's anything that says we can't buy a school.
Well, and I think the speculation was that because it was 20 miles an hour, we had widely varying speeds because some people were obeying it and some people weren't. And when you have people driving different speeds, that's when you have accidents. And so that was the speculation as to why those statistics went south on us. So I think we heard loud and clear from the majority of the public on this. And I agree with Councilman Friel that there's an argument to be made for the 20 miles an hour around the hospital, but we had a robust discussion about this before we got to this point. So, and I think we just go back to where we were. Any other discussion or amendments? Please cast your vote and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 18. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 5 exhibits. Correspondence from Fleur Trammell to J. Carter Napier dated October 21, 2019. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated November 12, 2019. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication is published on the City of Casper website dated November 8, 2019. Exhibit number 4, affidavit of notice of conspicuous posting pursuant to Wyoming Statute 12-4-104A is posted at 256 South Center Street dated November 8, 2019. And exhibit number 5, liquor license application filed October 16, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the liquor license associated with what used to be the Wonder Bar. It is being transferred essentially to a new owner at the same location on Center Street there. That new owner would be the Wyoming Rib and Chop. The only other detail that I would add is that we hear they're opening in December.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments again are limited to 5 minutes, and please no duplication. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of ownership to please approach the lectern. Is anyone here to speak in favor? Good evening, sir.
Mayor, my name is Chris O'Brien. I'm one of the owners of the Wyoming Rib and Chop House. It's looking to get that license transferred to us.
Could we get your address to Mr. O'Brien?
Home address is 1418 Powers Boulevard, Belgrade, Montana.
Okay.
Got a local address if I need one for you, but
My wife is from Roberts, so.
Very nice. Not sure what y'all would like to hear and need to hear. We are going to shoot for December. Got to go through some other pieces to get done, but we're very excited to bring a Rib and Chop House to Casper. So I wanted to make myself available if there were questions for me.
Questions for Mr. O'Brien?
I just want to make a comment. Sure.
Councilman Bates?
As always, I always like to thank anybody for investing in Casper, so thank you for willing to. On top of it, love the Rib and Chop House in Sheridan. Every time I'm up there, I eat. I don't know if that's your guys's, but I'm assuming so. Amazing food, so thank you.
If there be no other comments, I would like to echo those remarks. Welcome to Casper. We're glad to have you guys here, and good luck in your business.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much.
Is anyone else here to speak in favor of this transfer of license? If there be no others to speak in favor, I would now ask any individuals who are here this evening to speak in opposition to this license transfer to please approach the lectern. Anyone here to speak in opposition? There being no others to speak on this matter, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 18.
Boom.
Moved by Councilman Kathy, seconded by Councilman Friel. If I got it, oh, sorry, missed again. Councilman Hopkins, motion by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Friel. Any discussion amongst council here? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Council will now discuss the ordinance for the zone change of 1.65 acres in the Garden Creek Square addition. This item will be open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance approving a zone change of 1.65 acres described as Tract A, Garden Creek Square addition.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Bates, seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Council will now listen to public comment. Is anyone here this evening to speak on the Garden Creek Square addition? Any discussion amongst council? Any amendments? Please cast your vote and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Council will now discuss the ordinance for the updates to the horizontal reference datum. This item will be open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
Amending the Casper Municipal Code to coincide with updates to the horizontal reference datum used by the City of Casper.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
It was you this time?
It was me this time.
Moved by Councilman Kathy, seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Council will now listen to public comment. Is anyone here this evening to speak on these updates? Any discussion amongst council or amendments? Please cast your vote and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 10A1, a grant agreement with the Wyoming State Loan and Investment Board for the Midwest Avenue Reconstruction Project. Item 10A2, a change order number 3 with Knife River for the 2018 Arterials and Collectors Project. Item 10A3, a change order number 1 with Car Coatings for the North Park Tank Exterior Painting Project. Item 10A4, an easement with Rocky Mountain Power as part of the Ice Arena Chiller System Replacement Project. Item 10A5, an agreement with WWC Engineering for the K Street Phase 2A project. Item 10A6, an agreement with YDOT for the I-25 Casper Marginal Water and Sanitary Sewer Main Replacement Project. Item 10A7, a contract with WLC Engineering for the Ridgecrest Zone 2 and 3 Waterline Replacement Project. Item 10A8, a change order number 1 with Trito Construction for the North Beverly Street Improvements Project. Item 10A9, an agreement with the Wyoming Medical Center for public safety dispatching and enhanced 911 service. Item 10A10, an amendment to the employment agreement with Callie E. Lund. Item 10A11, a memorandum of understanding with the Hogadon Night Skiing Project for the acceptance of the gift of infrastructure to allow for night skiing at Hogadon. Item 10A12, authorizing the release of local assessment district liens on properties listed on the exhibit dated October 21st, 2019.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if I'm out of order with this, but I did have a question about item 10A8 with Trito Construction.
We would have to suspend our rules to have a discussion. Would you like to make a motion that we suspend?
Actually, I would, yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in, do we just take a voice vote on that? Okay. All in favor of suspending the rules so we can discuss this item?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Let's enter into our discussion. Councilman Huber.
My main question there, if any of you have looked at that, Mr. Trito talks about 8 days that he wants an extension on this because he says he was waiting for answers from the city staff. Some days that he was for additional curb and gutter that he had to put in, some days for changes in drainage things. The real one that I have a question with is where he says that he needs 14 days extension, but in essence because the neighbor's got in his way. And that project has been delayed, drug out and everything, and frankly, I'm troubled that he comes in and says, I want an extension because some of these neighbors have delayed my progress here. And I don't know if this is the right time or place to bring that up, but that was troubling to me.
Other comments? Councilman Friel.
And Mr. Mayor, I would like to echo that too, because I believe we had several complaints that came in from businesses in that area where the construction company was actually keeping them from having their businesses open or access to the business, if I'm correct.
Mr. City Manager, I know you've had a number of discussions about this matter and had to field a number of these complaints. Could you give us a kind of an impartial review of how this all played out? In your recollection, is there anything you could add?
Mr. Mayor, there is quite a bit of detail that we could provide in terms of shedding some light with regard to the request that's before you this evening. There's a couple ways we could go with this. We could certainly remove this item from the consent list and bring it forward to a work session if you'd like to talk further about some of these details and some of the issues surrounding this. And then, of course, allowing us to approve the rest of the items on this particular consent agenda. Or I could certainly have Mr. Beamer come up and give us a little more insight right now as it relates to some of the issues that are bringing forward this request for your formal consideration this evening. What I can tell you is that we were not originally anticipating a winter shutdown for this project. I would also say that indeed, with regard to the proximity that this project had to a number of approaches and to businesses and so forth, that it did make for some difficult access throughout the breadth of the project. I would also say, however, that both Andrew's team as well as Trito's team worked pretty hard from my perspective to try to keep access open throughout the entire aspect of this project. There certainly were times where we were trying to be very cognizant of delivery schedules with respect to some of those businesses, as well as working on nights and over the weekend when some of the businesses weren't as active. But to say that that this was an imperfect situation would probably be an understatement.
If I remember correctly, some of these complaints were kind of how these owners felt that they were treated by the Trito foreman or some of the Trito workers, if I remember correctly.
Mr. Mayor, we did take some complaints along those lines, and we also had complaints about the owners as well. So again, I'm not prepared to say that this was a perfect situation and that everything was handled perfectly, but I would say that to lay it all at the feet of Trito solely, I'm not prepared to support that statement.
Other discussion or questions? Councilwoman Lutz.
Just so that I guess it's vocalized and said, the businesses that I spoke with that were involved were actually spoke very highly of the city employees that were involved. They said the city was there every single time that they called us a problem. They were there immediately. There was never a delay or a wait. Every time they called with a complaint, they immediately responded and did what they could within their power. So just wanted to make that clear that the city employees were 100% not a problem. They were a huge bridge and a huge help to those businesses, was my understanding.
Okay. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I followed this pretty closely. When the project started, I got personally some complaints from some folks I knew over there, and they said, this is just not going like we planned. Well, it looks to me like perhaps what happened is that we worked very hard on the Midwest project. They had meetings every Friday, progress meetings every Friday. And I don't know, that's kind of normal, I think, in a project. But this one was, it's as complicated as what we had on some of the Midwest areas, with the exception that we probably didn't have quite as much plumbing. But I think, quite honestly, both sides were kind of trying to work together. And, you know, when you're actually going to have to redo a whole intersection like that, and there aren't many escape routes to get around. It's not like you can go around the block. You kind of expect some of those issues, and I think, quite honestly, it's kind of been worked out, and right now traffic flows through there. And the stuff that's left to do is not a great deal, so.
Do you have another comment, Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I would have no problem at all having Mr. Beamer take some of your time right now to go through some questions in more specific detail, if that pleases the council.
Mr. Beamer, please.
Mr. Mayor, Council, you're right. There were some issues with the contractor and owners, but it was a two-way street to a certain extent, and we did our best to get through those issues. The time extension, I think, is the biggest issue perhaps for council at this time. And you may recall we had a very wet fall, and we had a storm sewer that was actually plugged and causing that system to surcharge, which then saturated the subgrade. So I don't have the details of what Trado asked for, but I can tell you that where there are some real delays caused by weather and caused by a blocked storm sewer, essentially, that we had to work with the subgrade to get that back. We had an inlet that we had to redo that was not part of the original plans. I'm fighting a cold, my apologies. And some additional curb and gutter work that had to be done to get this project to the status it is in now. Having said that, he did not get all the work done in accordance with the change order that you're looking to approve tonight. So he was assessed LDs, and everything he does in the spring, he will be under liquidated damages as well. So we rely very heavily on our consultant, and in this case it was CPI, and they are recommending, I believe, a 30-day time extension. And so, as such, we feel that's a reasonable time extension to grant.
With the winter shutdown?
With the winter shutdown, yes, correct.
Andrew, I know we certainly expect our employees to take the high road in any kind of a dispute and remain professional in the way we respond, even when a citizen's very upset about something, that we can't kind of allow our staff to get down into that level where people are cussing at each other or raising their voices. Is it reasonable for us to expect contractors to abide by those same kind of rules when they're dealing with upset owners? I just didn't like what and of course I wasn't there, I don't know how these things were said, but it sounded like it got pretty nasty on both sides.
Mr. Mayor, Council, yes, I think it is reasonable for us to expect our contractors to behave professionally with our citizens. Having said that, that is not always the case.
Do we have any way of encouraging, requiring, reprimanding people so that this behavior doesn't continue? Because I just don't like hearing that people are treated that way when they may have a very legitimate complaint.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I don't know if there's any contractually obligation that we can follow. I can tell you that I met personally with the contractor on this project and on the Midwest project to talk about some behavior patterns that I was not happy with. So discussions have been held, but contractually, can I do anything about it? Not necessarily.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Beamer? Councilman Friel.
Well, I don't think it's really a question. I think it's just more of a statement. And I think along the lines of contractors, when we hire them on to do work for us, they're an extension of the city. And so I think the biggest concern that I've had in this instance, and again, not being there and seeing what took place, but in fact, if you do have contractors and business owners that are fighting and the contractors are not being professional in that manner, they are an extension of us, is kind of the way I look at it. So, and I don't know how you go about fixing that, but that's where my concern lies in this whole thing, was the amount of complaints that we heard. And again, wasn't there, so could have been both ways. If it needs to be extended, then it needs to be extended. But
I mean, it may not have any actual impact, but I mean, I suppose we could include a clause in there that the contractor is expected to behave in a professional manner when interacting with members of the public. Is there any reason why we couldn't do that? I mean, because there was no violation of the contract. I mean, and I don't know how you would even interpret something like that, but.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think that's a reasonable addition to put forward. you know, we typically have contractors work professionally and so forth. And so if there were instances of that not being the case, that's usually the exception and not the rule, thankfully. But without a doubt, that does not seem to me to be an unreasonable thing to include from now on.
Well, there's a story behind every rule, right?
You betcha.
Councilman Huber.
I'd like to just say a couple of things. I do not at all in any manner relish dragging anyone in and reprimanding them in a public forum or anything like that. I would not want to do that with any staff person. I wouldn't want to do that with any contractor either. But I would, in fact, I would move that we approve this consent item, but with the addendum that, we strongly urge that our contractors abide by the same rules of decorum that we would expect city employees to abide by, and that the council is acutely aware of I'm trying to figure out a way to say the tardiness of Mr. Trito in completing this project. And I understand that there are some reasons and some things, but, frankly, in my opinion, the level of his workmanship does not come up to the level of what I would like to see city contractors doing. I don't know how we would say something that I've got no problem with the language that I just suggested about decorum of their employees, but I would also like to see us put an addendum on there that we are concerned about the patterns of delay that have occurred with this project on his part.
Any other questions for Mr. Beamer? Is that a reasonable thing to add to this? Some comment is that even meaningful to?
Right now, our contract does allow for the assessment of liquidated damages when you're beyond the contract time, and he is currently facing liquidated damages on this project. So I think the contract generally already accounts for that. The level of decorum, it's hard to change a contract after it's already been executed, especially something that deals with, how do I say it, decorum.
Well, and that's, excuse me, but that's, I think I couched my language in terms of a suggestion, not a contract, or I meant to couch it in terms of a suggestion instead of a contract term, at least at this point, for those exact reasons.
He's already been given that type of counsel.
And clearly in communicating that this has been passed, which I assume it will be, you can certainly convey that there was a level of unhappiness with council. And of course, the big hammer that we have that we never want to use is a contractor can be declared an unresponsible bidder. Is that correct, Mr. Beamer? Is that the term? And be bypassed even if they are the lowest bidder, if we ever chose to use that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, my concerns have been addressed. My motion, I didn't hear a second to it, and so I would just suggest that we put this back on the consent agenda.
Okay, well, we are currently not abiding by our rules by a affirmed motion. So, Councilman Friel?
If I could just ask one more question. So a winter shutdown, what time period does that shut the project down until it actually starts again? And
Mr. Mayor, Council, I don't have the actual change order in front of me, but it'll essentially cease the assessment of liquidated damages probably till sometime in March or April when he starts back up again, and then LDs will begin to accrue again.
okay, could that be weather dependent? So let's just say we have a terrible April and he was supposed to start in March. Could it be put off again until the weather was right?
I believe there's a date certain for him to start, but again, I don't have the change order in front of me.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councilman Lutz.
Just in all fairness, because none of us were actually witness to any of these discussions, I do just want to point out, anyone who's ever been in a management position, chances are it wasn't the owner of this company that was potentially having these interactions. You can instruct your staff on, how you'd like them. You can have code of ethics. You can do these things. There's still certain things that are out of your control. And so I guess I just wanted to make the statement that I wasn't there. I don't always think it's the owner that's necessarily talking with the business owners. It might be staff members that aren't necessarily representative. They are representative of the company, but they're not the ownership of the company.
Okay, I think we're good. So, Mr. Henley, do we need to pass a motion to go back to reenact our rules? Or can we just go back to the vote?
Excuse me, Mayor, I think you can go back to the vote, and people can have a particular, though, since this was, they can have a particular notice if they don't want to vote for this or they want to abstain on number 8.
Okay. All right, Mr. City Manager, did you have anything else you wanted to comment on with respect to the consent resolutions?
Mr. Mayor, just to say that we're really hopeful that we can have night skiing by the end of the calendar year.
Great. Okay. It's an amazing thing. Okay, any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
Did we?
I don't know that the motion was on the floor.
I thought it was, and then we suspended. Or did we suspend before we even
I thought
took?
we suspended before.
We suspended, and then Councilman Huber first, or did I second his motion, but we have not done a motion.
Thank you. Okay, the chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Friel. Any other abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote.
Too many buttons here.
Just wait.
There we go.
With all members voting aye, motion
Like
passed.
a well-oiled machine. Please read the consent minute action titles.
Item 11A1, the purchase of 1 new snow groomer and attachments from Peterson Equipment. Item 11A2, the purchase and installation of 12 new foam-filled loader tires from Bighorn Tire Incorporated. Item 11A3, the purchase of 3 new mid-size police utility vehicles from Fremont Motors. Item 11A4, the purchase of 2 motorcycles from Casper Mountain Motorsports. Item 11A5, the purchase of 1 Dodge Ram pickup with plow from Fremont Motors.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilwoman Lutz. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Okay, at this time we'll ask council members to bring forth relevant concerns or items of interest. I can never remember which way I went last time, so Councilman Pacheco.
I don't have anything tonight.
Councilman Huber.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilman Friel.
Nothing tonight.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Nothing.
Councilman Hopkins.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilman Cathy.
In answer to one of the questions that came up about the contract with Trito, we're going from a substantial completion of October 1 to October 31, and a final completion from October 15th to June 15th of next year. So we should not have any concerns about the weather in the spring or anything else. So I realize Mr. Beamer didn't have what we had in front of us, but that's what that change order is doing.
Okay.
So wanted to pass that on. About all from that standpoint. From the city standpoint, from the city water standpoint, we had a joint powers water board meeting today, and it looks like it was a very good thing that over the last 2.5 years, we finally put in a new tank out there for part of our water system, because the one and only tank that we then took out of service has major repairs to be done. So the water plant could have been in a serious situation had that expenditure not taken place. So I would have to give a kudos to those members of the board that were there for the last 2 years of going ahead and getting that project taken care of.
I think it was like 4 years, actually.
Well, I wasn't going to get into that, but yeah, when you're gone for a while and you come back and you finally hear that the project you remember working on, but yeah,
Took a while to get it.
it was still a good thing that it got pushed through.
Anything else?
That was all.
Councilwoman Lutz.
Just really quickly, and I know I brought it up in a work session. Last weekend, the City Rec Center hosted what's called the Casper Open Volleyball Tournament, which has been in existence for, I think, almost 40 years, maybe a couple more. And when I talk to people about it, no one in the city seems to know about this event, but it's a really big deal. 141 teams played in it this year, with multiple teams coming from out of state. It's a huge boost in hotel stays. It's a huge boost in shopping and restaurant spending. And I don't know, I guess it's pretty great that we have that. That's an enormous tournament of adult volleyball players, and it happens here. So we're really lucky to have that. Well, no comment.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Councilman Bates.
Just two. One, I don't have any ties to it, but I'm a big advocate, though, for the CAP Center that is a voice for kids, little kids that go through certain situations. Having a fundraiser this Thursday at 5:30 at Uncork, so if anybody can make it and at least just buy a ticket to support, not so much the business, but every single one of those kids that go through a terrible situation, that they're there for them. So I encourage staff.
And where's Uncorked again?
That's in Mills as you're headed on Poison Spider Road.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Yeah. So if council could, that'd be great. It helps those kids. That breaks my heart hearing what some of the tragedy that they go through. And then a huge tragedy, not tragedy, but sadness that has come to, I think, all of our attention is Officer Kenny Metters passed away recently, and I didn't personally know him, but anytime we lose a officer within our city, that is a huge loss. And so I want to, if I may, on behalf of council, our hearts go out to the families and friends of his. So that's all I have.
Thank you. The only thing I would like to comment on is that the community will be coming to an awareness of a very serious tragedy that occurred within a family here in Casper that involved the death of one of our citizens in a family violence incident that sounds like it was extremely difficult to respond to, and of course a horrible tragedy for the family members. And this will be a time for us to come together as a community and link arms and support each other as we try to comprehend a senseless act of violence that took one of our citizens and that exposed a number of our emergency responders to some horrible events. And so these very difficult matters tend to help us put things in perspective and realize that most of the things that we get upset about and worry about are really fairly trivial in the long run. And hopefully this event will be a time for us to appreciate those in our lives and try to support the people who are struggling to reduce the likelihood that we'll see future acts of this sort. So. And with that, the next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, the 26th of November, in the Council's meeting room, and a regular Council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019, in the Council chambers. A notice of an executive session to take place at this time and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss regarding land items and litigation. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjourning of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Bates. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into executive session having been moved and seconded, and that motion requiring a 2/3 majority of council present, please cast your vote. A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into an executive session.